Hi and welcome to this DCP web tutorial. In today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to join video clips using Adobe Premiere Pro. Okay, so on my desktop I've got this folder, and inside this folder I've got 3 video clips. I downloaded these video clips from Pixabay. I'll put links in the YouTube description so you can download them as well. Let's go ahead and open up Adobe Premiere and we drag and drop these into the media pool. Let's take these 3 clips and drag and drop them onto the timeline. Okay, so to follow this tutorial, make sure you go to Windows and make sure you have effects enabled here. So you should see the effects over here on the side, right? This controller, and then the effects controls on this side as well. Here you can see effects controls. So let's say, for example, there's a few different ways to explain this, but let's just explain 3 different methods of how I use Adobe Premiere and how I join clips together and the reasons behind it. So let's just do something really basic. Let's select the first 2 with the mouse. So just highlight, left click and select the first 2. Let's just right click and group them. So when we group them, if I click on them, they will behave as one object when I drag them across the timeline. So let's drag it across to this side, and you can see I can move both those objects simultaneously. But that is a good way to move objects in the timeline, but if we want to apply effects to it, it's not such a good thing. So let's say, for example, I've got VR glow here, right? Inside of the effects, yeah, underneath, yeah, here, VR glow. Let's drag that onto these grouped objects. When I drag and drop them onto the group objects, when I click on this, I won't see any of the effects controls in here. I have to now right click on them and then ungroup them, and then click on the first clip, and then I'll start to see the VR glow option. So if I move across this timeline, I can play around with the VR glow and, you know, make this sun glow a little bit and do all that good stuff. All right, but that's probably not the best way to do this. So if I click on this VR glow and clear it, click on this one and clear it. So when I left click and select both and group them, normally I'm doing this just to move those objects across the timeline. Now if I want to apply an effect to both clips at the same time, I'm going to select both of these clips, right click on them and go to nest here, nest. When I click on nest, it's going to ask me to give it a name. Let's just call this intro, for example, and I'll click OK. Now those 2 clips get combined together. It turns green like this. If it was 3 or 4 or 5, there would just be one green bar there, right? But this represents 2 clips. It also places that into the media pool here. It's called intro. That's what we labeled it, right? Intro. And you'll see that on the timeline here. Now we can take something like VR glow and drag that onto this nest here, nested object. And when we drag it on there, we can apply this VR glow to both objects at the same time, right? We can change the glow radius. You can see the sun changing there. You can change the brightness as well. And as we scrub through this timeline on these 2 clips, we'll see that that glow effect is applied to both of the clips, right? We can also double click inside. So if we double click on this green bar, it will open up a new tab. And in effect, you can think of this this nested object like a little bucket, and you're putting clips inside. So here we put 2 clips inside of that bucket. Think of it that way, or inside of that folder, however you want to think of it. And we can manipulate now these 2 clips individually. So we can apply effects separately on these 2 particular clips. So for example, we might take, let's say levels, for example. We can drag that onto the first clip. If we move across the timeline to here, then we can change like the black levels here, right? We can make it much darker. We can just manipulate the levels here, and that will only be applied to the first clip, right? Just this first one. So as we drag across, it won't apply it to this one. If you want it on this one as well, then you can drag levels onto this one, and you can tweak that separately, right? So you don't have to use the exact same controls. You can tweak them separately for each clip. But where you want to apply an effect across both clips, if we close this intro, it's better to apply it on the nested object right here, right? So you can see the luma, the VR glow here. So we can manipulate that separately within the timeline when we double click, or we can apply it to the whole object here, the whole nested object. And as we move across the timeline, it will be applied to both of them. So hopefully that makes sense. That's really the nested objects, right? The nest. So let's select both these clips and delete them, and we'll click on all 3 of these again, and we'll select them and drag them back on the timeline. Now there's another option in here. If I select both of these first clips, right click on them, there's something called make subsequence. So when I click that, it will create a new clip here. Subsequence is called underscore sub here, yeah? Now, really, in essence, for me, from what I can see, this works exactly the same way as the nested object. The only difference is it doesn't combine them on the timeline automatically. Before, remember, these turn green straight away. So if we take this subset and drag it to the timeline, and then just right click, we can get rid of this audio for now, we don't need that. You can see it's still the same green bar, right? Still the same one. And we can still apply effects to it. We can still take our effects from here, and we can drag and drop them onto this object, and it will apply it to, again, both of the objects on this particular clip, on this subset. And we can double click on it, and we can still go inside and see the two individual clips and manipulate them separately as well. You can close down these tabs if you don't want them open, but just double clicking on them will open a new tab, and your timeline will always be on the left hand side here, the first object here on the left hand side. So the only difference between nested and subset is nested will combine these automatically, right? It will still create the clip in the media pool, but it will combine them on the timeline, and subset will create the clip in the media pool here, but not apply it directly to the objects on the timeline. That's really the only difference I can see. So I hope you find this tutorial useful. It's a good way of if you're filming and you're filming maybe jump cuts on your work. So you're filming something and you're doing a jump cut between two different camera angles, but the lighting and everything is pretty much the same, but you want to apply effects to those two clips, then this is probably a smarter approach to do that. Okay, let's go ahead and go to File, Save, and let's minimize this. That's how you go about joining video clips within Premiere Pro so that you can apply effects across multiple clips. I hope you find this tutorial useful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next DCP web tutorial.